On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. I hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. A lot is going on right now, and there's this huge push to cause patriots to step up and do things that we shouldn't do, things that are going to get us in trouble, things that are going to get really this whole mess moving in a bad direction. And I know what's frustrating to a lot of us, like myself included, is I want to do something to help. I want to be a part of helping. Now, hopefully you've already reached out to your Congress members and all that nonsense, but ultimately at this point, informing yourself and making sure your home, your family, and you yourself are safe is really your job right now. Becoming informed, seeing what's happening, and try to understand the big picture of what's going on around us. We're not going to get a lot of proof of what plans Trump may or may not have. Pretty sure he does. But we're not going to get any proof of that until the date it happens, or until shortly after it happens, or however this plays out. We're not going to know before. Nobody is. Even people like Monkey, we're not going to be seeing the flights that matter. And Monkey knows that. He's acknowledged that from Monkey Works US. Great channel. Love the guy. Love the guy. So this stuff isn't going to be broadcast. What has been broadcast is the indirect portions of it. The parts of the evidence that are a little bit more on the outside and not as direct. That is what is very loud right now. That is what I'm looking at, and that is what is making me realize something is going on. Something is in the works. The deep state knows it. Trump knows it. But we just don't know what, where, when, how, or who exactly. So we're going to see how things play out from this point forward. Now, something that was brought up on the Alamo speech that Trump just did, so he talked about the 25th Amendment, how he wasn't even remotely worried about that, and how Biden and his administration should be very worried about it. And in fact, he even then said, be careful what you wish for. And that, of course, dug everyone back to this particular post. What happens if texts originating from an FBI agent to several internal people discussed the possible assassination of a POTUS or even a member of his family? Just hypothetically, what if they had any evidence or proof of that? Now, anything similar to that, you have to understand, is never going to be presented to us, ever. And a lot of you be like, why? We should be able to know if someone wanted to kill Trump or his family. And you're right to a point. But the other side of that equation is now you have people that start to lose belief in the FBI, the CIA, the different government agencies, the Department of Homeland Defense, all these, I guess, I'm not a fond of big government, and we've got a huge government, but ultimately these government agencies are supposed to be protecting we the people. And if we lose absolute faith in the government, it's not just the Constitution, folks, right? Like we've got a functioning government, we've got soldiers and Marines that are protecting our borders. And if we allow things to completely fall apart and people to completely lose faith in the system, we are in a bad chance. We're severely weakened, and it would be a great time to be attacked. So we can't really do that. So it's this tap dancing on the line of what people can know and what we can't really tell them. And I know a lot of us are not going to get told even close to enough information. Not even close. I'm there with you. We will not know nearly as much as we want. But we will find out what we find out. We will see transitions, and either people will just naturally lose their lives, die from some disease, we won't necessarily know. They won't win election, next go. Some people might get arrested or just disappear, and maybe we won't know exactly what happened. Things will play out. Certain CEOs and CFOs will quit. Like, again, that same thing that's been kind of going on, we'll see more of. I don't know if we're ever going to know exactly what happened. In fact, I doubt it. But we've all played a major role in how all of this does play out. And we've been the patriots that they hoped we would be, especially during the PSYOP portion, because it was very confusing. They were intentionally providing mixed information because they needed to. They knew the deep state was looking at those intelligence drops too. But how can I have a thing that causes confusion to the enemy, but yet still gets my friends to start talking about something that I need them to wake up to. I need people to start to realize that there's a lot of bad things that have been happening. How do I accomplish both? And things like this played a large role in that. People like you, people like me that were sharing this information. And that's what became so scary, is they're realizing how many of us there are. Now, there's a couple stories going around right now. BLM activists posed as Trump supporters before the Capitol false flag. I think a lot of us have seen the videos. What I want to remind people of is just don't even bother with the arguments about whether or not it was Trump supporters, whether or not it was Antifa. The people that have made up their mind about what happened on that Wednesday have already made up their mind. Literally, don't waste the energy. Don't spend the time. It's not worth it. You've seen the evidence. I've seen the evidence. They've been shown the evidence they've seen. I mean, I showed it to a couple friends of mine. I'm like, there was a place where they were chanting Antifa, and they were even pulling someone off the window that was breaking window, and they're like, really? No, I didn't see that. And I'm like, shoot. And I pulled up one of my videos, and I had them both watch it, and they're like, oh, okay. Like, it didn't necessarily change their opinion, but they did realize there's information that's not being shared, or is maybe being shared a little differently amongst both sides. And that is what's happening. Don't waste your energy arguing about it. Very importantly, too, coming up, armed protests are planned for all 50 state capitals. This is a double-fold thing. Now, it needs to be one of the things, and it's going to be no matter what. But what I want people to not play a part in, or what I want people to be warned about, is this is being planned to be used by the deep state to mess with patriots, to give patriots a bad name. So do not show up to any of these state capitals on the 20th armed. You want to go to those places and protest without weapons? That's fine. I don't recommend that either. But absolutely, do not go to these things armed. Violence is not okay, and they're looking to pin things on anybody silly enough to show up to these things with a weapon. Don't do it. Don't fall for it. You're not helping the country. You're not helping the movement. You're not helping the cause. Stay home. Defend your family. Defend your friends. Defend your neighbor. Defend your neighborhood. And hopefully nothing happens. I'm not saying anything's going to happen in your neighborhood, but what I am saying is that's where your weapon needs to be right now, at home. And that's where it should be during this. We are not going to be storming any capitals. We're not going to be storming the White House. We're not going to be storming anything. This is going to be handled differently than that. It's an information warfare from the standpoint of us, we the people. We need to understand what's going on. We need to understand how this is being played out to the best of our abilities, just by paying attention to what we're seeing. And we also need to understand that we've got a deep state that's desperately trying to get us to fight with each other. That's what they want. They want you and me to fight. They care less about all this other nonsense. They want us to go after each other. So do not fall for it. Something important to point out, President Trump's approval rating is out of control right now. This is Rasmussen where we get these numbers. 48% of Trump voters, approve of Trump's performance. Now, Rasmussen polls, one of the more accurate ones, but still wrong. And these guys have internal polling. Deep State does as well. But Trump and all these guys have internal polling. They know what his approval rating is. And most likely, and again, I have no evidence, but they're saying 48%, and anything that looks good on Trump has been diminished so it looks less good. So what that probably means is over 50% of voters probably approve. Now, right now, Congress's approval rating is like 12%. Horrible. This guy's approval rating is, they're saying 48%. Most likely it's higher than that. Why do you think they're scared? This man's loved. They know he's loved. They couldn't let him win a second term. They couldn't. They've got changes that need to happen. He screwed stuff up really bad as far as they're concerned. And so they've got to try to resolve that as quickly as possible. The rest of the world's on a time frame. The rest of the world's moving along. We need to catch up. We were supposed to be done with a war with Korea and then have a collapsed economy. And then all of us would be like, oh my God, whatever you can do to make life better, Hillary, make us better. And that's what would have happened. But none of that played out. This guy took us out of all sorts of different agencies, and he's put his foot down. And done so almost like he knows more's coming. The best is yet to come. We've heard the teasing us. Now, can he come out and say that when he was speaking at the Alamo? He made a couple comments that talked about how Biden was his administration, right? Again, I think at this point, because of you and me and the fear that we're going to go do something silly and get ourselves killed or make a bad name for the movement, it's almost like I'd rather just people think I've lost, because nothing can stop what's coming. So from his standpoint, it's almost safer to have people think he lost for a short period of time than to get people riled up and doing things that are causing more problems. I think Wednesday happened the way it was supposed to. I think the way that the news media blew it out probably damaged us more than maybe the intention was initially. I don't know. But I do think some things were accomplished out of that. I mean, Nancy's laptop's missing, and I'm betting you money there's evidence on there. And I'll bet you money that the White Hats got it. Because frankly, if anyone else got it, they're not going to be able to get into it anyway. So I think they're a little concerned. Now, I was going to play this, and I'm not going to now, but ultimately, we've got these two discussing how there's huge differences between what happened in the summer and what happened on Wednesdays. And anybody that tries to say, yeah, but during the summer, and they just want to throw that down. And at the very end of it, Chris Cuomo decides to once again reiterate how this is all an issue about black people versus white people. Again, he takes it back to the race card. He makes it about race once again, rather than being about what it's actually about, which is we've got politicians that don't care about us. We've got a communist nation that is doing everything in its power to infiltrate and steal our technology. We've got a media network that doesn't want to talk about the reality of what's going on and, in fact, is complicit in what is going on because they keep passing around bad information. We've got all these things that are working against us. So forgive me for not trusting these two guys. And again, this isn't left or right. This is about tyranny versus freedom. And if they can keep us fighting each other, it makes their job of taking us over that much easier. But if we understand that, and then we've got maybe a neighbor that's pissed off at us and just throws a piece of trash over our wall or something because they don't like us, rather than throwing the piece of trash back and escalating things, just understand, they're just pissed. It's cool. I don't like it, but it's cool. I'm not going to retaliate. I'm not going to escalate because there's no need to. He just threw a piece of trash in my yard. It's kind of a metaphor, but I hope it works. I'm going to grab that trash and throw it in the trash can, and we'll just let it go. Now, if the guy's dumping bags of trash into your yard, that's a different story. Again, if it's simple, cool. But if it's someone that's, come on, you've got to know where lines are drawn. But certainly violence is not something that we want to move towards. And fighting one another is definitely going to help the deep state win. Major reason why we don't want patriots causing more ruckus. We don't need to fuel the fire of hatred right now. We need to fuel the fire of understanding. Samantha Power, who asked to unmask Michael Flynn, was nominated by Biden to the top post. We're seeing this all over. All of his top positions, all of the people that he is going to surround himself with are deep state players that are going to protect the deep state because they've got just as much invested in this and they've got just as much to lose if the truth ever comes out. So when we think about Hunter Biden being investigated and things like that, that's never going to happen. They can make a special counsel. The deep state will figure out a way to put a stop to it. Trust me, the way things are moving, they're putting together a government that will never allow the patriots to have a voice ever again. Everybody sees that. Trump sees that. This is known. This is one of those things where they're going to be like, we'll try it again in 2024. No, we won't. Can't. Because 2024, I don't know about you, but 40% of people don't believe that the elections are necessarily that good. Do I have any faith in Congress to fix that? No, zero faith. Zero faith that Congress will ever do anything to address any of the issues that we just experienced in the last 2-3 months. Nothing. Everybody knows that. Getting angry doesn't help that. Understanding it does. Understanding that this is sort of common knowledge amongst Trump and others. We've got people like Liz Cheney, Republican. Certainly one of the vice president, her dad, a vice president to one of the most corrupt families in the history of this planet. And Liz Cheney is trying to rain down terror on any of the Republicans that are Patriot supporters. or the other way around, Republicans that patriots do support. And she wants to be the voice of the GOP. She wants to be like, this is who the GOP is. Her and people like McConnell. They think they're the GOP. Problem is, there is no more Republican Party anymore, at least the way it once was. People know that. There's like 7 people in the Senate that we can trust. There's 120, 140 in the House that we can probably trust. Outside of that, there's a bunch of them we can't. So what's going to come from this? Probably a new party. The Republican Party's toast. McConnell and Cheney and all those people, they'll be in the Republican Party still. We won't be. We'll be in some other party. We'll be in the Patriot Party or the new Republican Party or whatever. It's going to be shiny and new, but it'll happen. These people don't have a future, and they certainly don't have a party anymore because we, the people, have woken up. We, the people, understand what's happening. We, the people, are confused, and we're wondering when the hell someone's going to stand up for us. I get that. I think it's happening. And part of why I think it's happening is because, well, stuff like this. On Monday, Mitch McConnell was saying, we're not going to do impeachment, not going to do it. It's not worth it. And that was back when they were trying to go down the 25th Amendment pact, which failed, and I've got some great information for that. So now Mitch McConnell's on board with the impeachment train. Very interesting. So these guys are going to try to push this through. Does this affect the timing of things? I don't know. Does this affect when the movement happens? Are they going to wait until people sign on the impeachment dotted line to see, once again, who? I don't know. But this demonstrates what the deep state is showing us. There's no question to all of us what they're trying to do. People are waking up. They can't put the genie back in the bottle. They can't get us to just fall in line behind these Republican leaders because we realize these people don't care about us. So they may be Republicans. I guess I'm not. And that's what's happening. Now, it's weird how you've got people like Alec Baldwin and all these other people that are allowed to say some of the most horrific things about Trump voters, about anyone that supports this stuff. Yet if anyone on the patriotic side of things says anything mean about anybody, we're cyberbullies, we're shut down, they make up all sorts of weird rules that don't even make sense. It's just very interesting, the double standard that exists. Again, deep state tells their friends on the left, there's no double standard, they're just making that up. All right, so then they run around and say, there's no double standard, you guys are wrong. But the rest of us who experience it, who see it, who one day were able to follow somebody, and then the following day that person's gone, or all these people that lost thousands of subscribers overnight because they shut down so many accounts, and Twitter's like, that's normal. No, it's not. It's not normal. Not at all. Not like that. So again, deep state's telling us one thing. We're obviously smart enough to know they're going to lie, and they're showing us something else. Speaking of showing us something else, China's rewritten their COVID history. They've purged 300 studies linking the virus to the Wuhan lab. 300 studies that they had that showed that's where it came from. They're deleting those studies. Why do you think? I mean, if it's an incorrect study, if it was done in error, I don't think they'd necessarily get rid of the story, right? You'd still keep the study. You'd still make sure people could see the study and just make sure that you learned from it. You didn't duplicate whatever errors it was, whatever the issue was with why it's incorrect. You would let it stand on that merit and let people judge it accordingly. The only way I could think that you would want to get rid of especially if I'm China, want to get rid of a study is if maybe it's got some truth to it. And we're tired of people realizing that this was made in a Chinese laboratory in the Wuhan province and possibly had a lab from Canada involved, as well as I think even possibly Israel. I'd heard at one point, but who knows? Who knows? I'm not sure who all's involved, and understand that when they put a country label on something, that's not the whole country. It's members of the country, and they a lot of times hide within the country to make it harder to get, like, we're not going to get mad at Canada, right? Even though it might have been like one laboratory in Canada that was deep state run. But what they'll say is this came from Canada, which isn't true. So the way the information comes to us is telling in and of itself. And the fact that they're removing information is telling in and of itself. Parler's going to be switching domains registry over to this Epic company, I guess that's who does Gab, does their back end. I've been involved with swapping from physical servers to AWS back about a year ago or so. It was a major pain in the butt, big problem, big difficulties. Learned a lot, but it was a lot that went into it. So changing an entire back end of a software platform is not a small feat. It depends how they did it. They got a lot of microservices and whatnot. It makes finding and replacing code much, much easier. But that being said, we'll see. But they're on their way. They're on their way to being back in service. I wouldn't expect it to happen, in days per se, but maybe a week or two, maybe. We'll see. Take some time, though. That's for sure. And I'll bet you money they're working around the clock, especially as big as they were getting. And they were probably starting to really make some extra money. So I'm sure they've got a little cash rich right now. So they probably can afford to do this. But it's good news in the big picture. Now, Nancy Pelosi, not surprising anybody, but again, showing us what's really going on, folks. And I know a lot of us are like, why can't we do something about it? We are. You and me can't do anything about it other than make sure everybody's got the information. The information warfare is key. That is where we are some of the better digital soldiers out there. Very important. Pelosi's naming Eric Swalwell as the House impeachment manager. This is the guy that was in bed with Fang Fang. Chinese got inside of his whole world. He was in intelligence, on the intelligence committee. This guy's dirty as dirty gets. He's been proven to be dirty. Yet, Pelosi's going to put him in charge of the impeachment. Someone who's obviously a never-Trumper and a hater of Trump. Everybody knows that. So, not a big surprise. This is the way the game's played. It's never really about being fair. It's never really about following the law. It's about getting power, keeping power, getting people out of your way and demonstrating to those that don't understand who's in charge, you demonstrate to them who's in charge. And sometimes that's through threats, bribes, and all sorts of other things. So we know Swalwell is definitely not clean. YouTube suspends President Trump's ability to upload videos. This just ties into the whole fact that he is not allowed to communicate. Why? They're dangerously scared of this man. Now, they say that he is who started the riot on the 6th, but he said, let's peacefully walk down to the Capitol and let our voices be heard. And also, the breach had occurred, like 45 minutes before his speech was even done. So a lot of the timelines don't match up with what the mainstream media is telling us. And of course, we've seen the information. We've seen the timelines. They've got video of it. And Trump was still talking. And again, they want to blame him for sparking this riot. Now, maybe that was because he said to have a bunch of people come to the Capitol. And again, that was to show support for what's going on and for trying to do the right thing on the 6th, which some question whether that happened or not. And the fact is, when the breach did occur, which might have been something they knew was going to happen and were expecting it, maybe they were going to do it all along, and that's why he tried to keep people in front of his podium as long as he did, because he knew the timing of it, because maybe there were some white hats involved, maybe the people that found Nancy Pelosi's laptop, and there was a couple other people that have been rumored to have lost their laptops. Was there something behind that? Probably. Is Nancy Pelosi probably nervous right now? She seems to be. And she hasn't been coming to the Capitol, by the way. I don't know if you guys saw some of the live video today as they've been talking the impeachment stuff. She is not the one sitting back on that old captain's chair. So someone knows something's up, don't they? We'll see it play out. We'll see how it happens. Mike Pence tells Pelosi he's not playing her political games, and he will not invoke the 25th Amendment. This is actually pretty cool. But again, it just brings more of that question as to what the hell's Mike Pence doing? Like, I don't get it. Very confused about the whole big picture, whether he screwed us over, whether he didn't. Kind of think he did, but it's playing out the way it did. And maybe it was just supposed to be part of the whole distraction and part of the whole rigmarole. But he starts off, every American was shocked and saddened by the attack of our nation's capital last week, and I am grateful for the leadership that you and other congressional leaders provided in reconvening Congress to complete the people's business on the very same day. It was a moment that demonstrated to the American people that unity that is still possible in Congress when it is needed most. But now, with just 8 days left in the president's term, you and the Democratic caucus are demanding that the cabinet and I invoke the 25th Amendment. I do not believe that such a course of action is in the best interest of our nation or consistent with our Constitution. Last week, I did not yield to pressure to exert power beyond my constitutional authority to determine the outcome of the election, and I will not now yield to efforts in the House of Representatives to play political games at a time so serious in the life of our nation. As you know full well, the 25th Amendment was designed to address the presidential's incapacity or disability. Just a few months ago, when you introduced legislation to create the 25th Amendment Commission, you said a president's fitness for office must be determined by science and facts. You said then that we must be very respectful of not making a judgment on the basis of comment or behavior that we don't like, but based off medical decisions. Madam Speaker, you were right. Under our Constitution, the 25th Amendment is not a means of punishment or usurpation. Invoking the 25th Amendment in such a manner would set a terrible precedent. After the horrific events in the last week, our administration's energy is directed at ensuring an orderly transition. The Bible says that for everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to heal and a time to build up. That time is now. In the midst of a global pandemic, economic hardship for millions of Americans, and the tragic events of January 6th, now is the time for us to come together. Now is the time to heal. I urge you and every member of Congress to avoid action that would further divide and inflame the passions of the moment. Work with us to lower the temperature and unite our country as we prepare to inaugurate President-elect Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. I pledge to you that I will continue to do my part to work in good faith with the incoming administration to ensure a proper transition of power. So help me God. Now, very important to point out that he is trying to get her to bring the rhetoric down because there's so much anger involved right now because they realize how much support Trump actually has. They are scared. And that is why McConnell's now looking at the impeachment path because Pence basically said, no, not doing the 25th Amendment. So that's been taken off the table. Again, Trump and Pence talked on Monday. And then this note comes out, I think, yesterday. So here we are. And I know a lot of us are wondering, when's something going to happen? When's something not going to happen? Is something going to happen? Is it going to happen before the 20th, on the 20th, after the 20th? I don't know. The day of the 20th would be an interesting day to do it. And before noon would be an interesting time. But it's hard to say. When we look at this post, 4414, Red 1, POTUS Twitter removal. No matter how you slice it and dice it, this one seems to have happened. Red 2, Central Communications blackout, continental U.S. This, I think, is when the emergency alert system happens. Now, we've already heard, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, that Google and Apple wanted to do updates to try to remove this auto alert emergency system, or EAS, emergency alert system. I know from my girlfriend that Apple had an update planned on her phone that was supposed to happen, I think, yesterday, but I talked to her beforehand and she turned off those updates and it didn't happen. I haven't seen it happen yet on my Note. I've got a Google phone, so I haven't seen it happen yet. So I'm not sure when or where or if that happens. There's been an email that was sent out that basically said any company that tries to block this information will be criminally charged, essentially. And if you're a U.S. company doing this to U.S. people, you're probably even in bigger trouble. So again, we'll see, but I think that blackout will happen, one, for good reasons, and two, for bad reasons. But what's going to happen, I think, is when the emergency alert system happens, I think other things are going to be brought down because I think that's when the arrests are likely going to be happening and or places getting stormed and people taken out in cuffs. These types of things can happen, but if you allow people to communicate, if you don't shut down or black out communications, when people are pulling up, when the sirens pull up in front of your house, you can be like, oh my God, they're here, and you'll text out and give people a heads up. But if you shut that down on this one short little moment of time where major stuff plays out, they won't be able to communicate outward, and we won't be able to hear about what's going on outward. We knew this was going to happen, and we knew they had a backup plan around it, which was the emergency alert system. And we know the deep state has done everything in their power to try to stop that, certainly doing everything in their power to keep Trump from being able to communicate with us. But again, he knew that. They told us this a long time ago. Red 3 class movements with Pelosi and Pence. We've seen this one sliced and diced a number of ways. Seems to have happened. One way or the other. Either Pelosi or Pence or both Pelosi certainly pushing the 25th Amendment and impeachment. Pence did the vote thing. And then also on the 6th, when the attack happened on the Congress, Pence and Pelosi were quickly swept away, probably through the tunnels that are underground below the Capitol building. So this seems to have happened. Now, my guess is, one, and that's why the 20th may just be the day, is because that's the day that they're already planning, the FBI, that there's going to be riots in all the capitals, all 50 states. And Washington, D.C. has already talked about how they're going to allow the National Guard to come into play. Interesting timing, don't you think? To have National Guard all around and maybe some people within that National Guard that might have some very specific plans or orders to follow through and possibly arrest people. So that, to me, seems like that'll happen the day the arrests are occurring. And right now, the 20th kind of makes the most sense. Of all the days, I mean, I know a lot of people are wanting to say 11.3 was supposed to be when Podesta and all that, right, and markers around that. And then people are saying, well, they said 11.3, but that date's already come and gone, so maybe they mean 1.13. So some people were thinking today would be the day. I don't think so. And I just think 11.3 and 11.4 could just be like bullet points, right? Like this is the 11th section, and this is the fourth part within the 11th section. It's 11.4. I've seen documentation happen like that frequently. Chapter 11, verse 4, whatever, right? So again, I think the numbers are meant to be confusing, and I think they've done a grand job at doing just that. This will happen the day that everything's supposed to go down. And like I said, to me, that sounds like the 20th, based off of what we've seen in the news, what we see being broadcast to us, and the fact that they're still so scared about Trump supporters and Trump himself means that they are still afraid he's going to do something. And he literally has up until noon on the 20th to do something. Technically, he's still commander-in-chief. Now, if this becomes a military option and it's completely in the hand of the military, and I don't know the legalities around that, and I'm not even going to pretend to. But a lot of evidence is supposed to be brought forth, and that's probably going to be during the communication blackout / emergency alert system. And again, when that comes out, the information that's contained within that should be sufficient to take a lot of people that are on the fence, maybe not total Trump haters, but people that are Democrat or voted Democrat or just, whatever. It might be enough to get a lot of them to go, oh, wow, some bad stuff went down. There's definitely going to be some never Trumpers and Trump haters that are never going to see the truth of it. They may not see this. There are going to be people that probably updated their iPhone and didn't even see the emergency alert service message anyway. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about trying to change people's minds that aren't ready to see or hear the truth. It's a waste of time and energy. Don't do it. Stand your ground. Stay in your place. Look for fellow patriots. Look for people who are asking questions, who are starting to wake up. Because we're going to come across Red 5 and Red 6 quite possibly within a week. And this will be the place where I think all of us will know, we'll remember this slide, 4414, and we'll be like, this is it. This is Red 5, Red 6. And we'll watch it happen. We'll watch it unfold. We'll fully be glued to it at that point, because at that point it's going to be that proof that so many of us wanted. But remember, a lot of this may happen under the surface. We may not see as much of it as we expect or want. We're going to have to see what happens, because obviously if Trump's still in charge somehow, that's going to have to be communicated to us. Otherwise, Biden's going to be our president come January 20th at noon Eastern Time. So we'll see how this continues to play out. They are scared of us. They are scared of our numbers. They are scared of how many of us are actually still supportive of Trump. They didn't think these numbers would be nearly this big, and they were hoping they could finagle us into following these Republican leaders to just do what they say, which is just relax, let this happen, we've got your backs. The problem is most of us have awoken to the fact that the Republican Party no longer serves us. And many of us now see this. And we certainly know the Democratic Party's not serving us. Again, we now see this. They're afraid of how many of us there are. United, we are very, very strong. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.